All right, you should be ready to go in just a few
Great.
seconds. So hang tight. Oh. All right, you're just about set. Give it about a few seconds and you should be good.
Super, thanks. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Radnor Township School District, Tuesday, November 24th, 2020, virtual regular business meeting. We'll call this meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to report that the board met in executive session on Tuesday, this evening, Tuesday, November 24th, to discuss personnel, legal, and safety issues. And now we'll go right underway with our report from students. Do we have Avery and?
Yep, I'm here.
Welcome, Avery.
To be enabled.
Oh, there you go. Welcome, Avery.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. What a month it has been. I bet everyone here tonight is as excited for our holiday break as the student body is. These last few weeks have been quite hectic. Sadly, the boys soccer team lost to Garnet Valley last Tuesday, ending one of their best seasons to date with an undefeated record prior to the Central League playoffs. The girls soccer team started their trek to the championship with a win over Springfield, then Conestoga, then faced off against Lower Merion this past Saturday in the Central League championship game, but suffered a tough 2-0 loss to the undefeated Aces. The girls field hockey team had similar success making it to the championship game on Saturday as well, facing off against Conestoga, but also suffered a tough loss against the formidable opponent. Saturday was a very busy day as the football team continued the longest high school football rivalry in the time-honored Lower Merion game. Although this year was different without Elm Week celebrations at the pep rally, it was great to see that the heart of the tradition, the football game, was able to proceed. Radnor came out on top with a great win over Lower Merion to break the tie between the number of wins. Students are excited to celebrate on their virtual half day on Monday after Thanksgiving break, thanks to Mr. Batchelor. All of the athletes that were competing in these games were asked to remain virtual this past week. It was a pretty dramatic and abrupt shift, but the athletes and teachers adjusted as quickly as possible to make the most of the situation. However, for those students in school, sometimes it was only themselves and a few other students, and in some classes even, there was just one student. With the PIAA's approval of winter sports leaving the final decision up to individual school districts, athletes are left wondering if they're going to have to be virtual for the entirety of their winter seasons, like the football boys were. And if so, how is this going to affect the in-person learning environment? Amid all the athletics, students have continued to pursue a virtualized approach to their extracurricular activities. Model UN hosted tryouts the second week in November and introduced 14 new members to their team. Students Helping Students held a virtual read aloud to the elementary school students called the Halloween Spooktacular, and the art club then led the students in a drawing activity. Students Helping Students has also partnered with the GW Child School in South Philly as pen pals to help the students practice their writing skills. What a great way to stay connected to the community during this time of social distancing. On Wednesday, November 18th, Ms. Peterson helped organize the annual Radnor Thanksgiving dinner, but socially distant style, of course. In past years, we've had members of the community and local senior citizens come to the high school and be served a delicious Thanksgiving meal by the high school students. However, this year it was not as possible, but the tradition still went on to go style. Students, many of whom are part of the National Honor Society, helped package the meals, including turkey, potatoes, gravy, stuffing, mac and cheese, salad, dessert, rolls, and every other Thanksgiving fixing you can probably think of. And then the second group of the students assembled the bags for the specific families as they came through the drive-through pickup. I know the families enjoyed their early Thanksgiving dinner, and hopefully each of you will have a delicious dinner on Thursday and enjoy some relaxing time with your families. See you in December.
Hello, everyone. Avery and the rest of senior student government successfully hosted their senior sunrise. Although this is a new tradition at Radnor, other high schools have used this event before to symbolize the beginning of the seniors' final year, and it was a memorable opportunity for them all to be together. The seniors have also been working on getting their senior shirts ordered like classes before them. Although a year and a half away, over the past month, the junior student government has been planning for our senior prom. We brainstormed many venues with indoor or outdoor settings to accommodate for the possibility that the dreaded COVID-19 might linger. As we proposed the 3 sites to our class, we received feedback concerning venues not mentioned. After hearing from our peers, we redistributed a poll which resulted in our class choosing the iconic Benjamin Franklin Institute as our senior prom venue. Unfortunately, because we haven't had many opportunities to fundraise due to COVID-19, the prices are slightly higher than previous years, but I believe our class will come together to pay the fees in order to have an amazing night in the city. This decision also isn't final, it's just our current situation, so we haven't made any reservations yet. Located on the front entrance, the junior government has also prepared a decorated box where all grades can drop a kind note to send to our elders in nursing homes because they've been the most isolated and affected this year. Along the same lines, Meister Singer's Winter Special is in the making. The class was recording their voices and are now on to filming music videos to send to retirement homes. The sophomore student government has also been active by hosting a cakewalk as a fundraiser, and they're meeting soon to discuss moving. Sorry for that. Or meeting soon to discuss plans moving forward. Continuing down the line, our freshman student government hasn't planned anything yet, but they hope to in the near future. As the quarter is coming to an end, so is the warm weather. Because of the colder temperatures, more students are eating inside compared to the high school's courtyards. Although seats are appropriately distanced, lunch is still a social hour for students who tend to face each other or be near classmates not in the same germ pool as them. But everyone is following protocol by wearing masks in the building. At the end of the quarter, tests upon tests were assessed, causing a mad rush to Hack or Home Access Center, a platform where students can view their grades. Hack is a great motivation booster for students across Radnor. Whether it be seeing an unwanted grade or one exceeding expectations, students strive to get better. Unfortunately, the Hack app is no longer accessible through login, and students are wishing it back so they can view one of their biggest motivations of all, our GPA, which cannot be seen on the website. Other than that, students are ready to take on the second marking period. As a last note, I'd like to thank administration for allowing juniors to park in the school parking lots during phase 2 through a lottery system. Thank you for having us as always, and we'll see you in December with our new sophomore student representative to the school board. Have a great night.
Thank you, Avery, and thank you, Austin. And now we'll get right underway with our superintendent report. Mr. Batchelor?
You know, I get accused of always looking at the silver linings and things, but I will say that, as Austin just mentioned, I don't know in our history that we've ever before had juniors parking on our campus. So the hybrid did give an opportunity for some additional parking, and also for as we look at our mitigation and what we're trying to do to socially distance everyone. So I'm happy that some of that is working out for some of our kids. So tonight I want to just talk about a couple of things in the superintendent's remarks. So it's good to see everyone, and all those that are joining us as well tonight. Our upcoming schedule, hopefully you can see we're sharing the screen. We have obviously a district holiday coming up, and we also have, and we announced on Sunday to our community that we would have virtual, the high school and middle school will be virtual for the week after Thanksgiving. So that November 30th through December 4th, all virtual for Radnor High School and Radnor Middle School. And I'll share a little bit more about that communication that I put out to the community on Sunday. Our elementary program will remain in hybrid. So our elementary program will continue to remain in hybrid. And then December 7th, we are planning to have our high school and middle school back, in hybrid after that week. So the next slide is everybody's familiar with. Each month we have been sharing an update of where we are based on the guardrails and the Pennsylvania Department of Health and the Pennsylvania Department of Education guardrail. And we are all very familiar with these guardrails. And what we see happening in the community, the level of spread is very concerning. We are all very concerned at what we're seeing, and we're also very concerned of the impact that this is having currently on our schools and could continue to have on our schools. The next slide, you'll see that the guardrails for the Chester County Health Department, which we've talked about before at length. And again, we continue to update these, and we continue to post these by Tuesday of every week, if not sooner. When the health department updates the information on late Friday afternoon, by Tuesday of that following, right after Friday or sooner, we update these charts. And again, you can see some very concerning numbers that we see taking place within Delaware County based on these guardrails. The next slide is the graph that we've been presenting and tracking each month, the 3 graphs. And again, we can see where we are with the being very high in the substantial spread and the concerns that is presenting for all of us and what this means for us moving forward. I want to just take this opportunity, and we've been sharing this and saying it to our community and continue. We all need to make sure that we are being vigilant with the protocols in school. We all need to make sure that we are recommitting ourselves to masking at all times, that the app that we ask everybody, students and staff, to do each morning, if you don't feel well, please don't come in. There is no shame, there is no blame. We need to be very careful of that as well. I think people, are feeling, that if, that they are embarrassed. We are living through something that none of us have ever lived through before. All right, this is something we're going to look back upon. This is a time in our life we're going to look back upon and be sharing with other generations of how did we manage, how did we survive. It's not a time to be pointing fingers. It's not a time to be blaming, but it is a time for all of us to not only recommit to the protocols, but to make sure that we are taking those protocols beyond our school walls. I'm going to talk about in a moment that what we are seeing is the high community spread is starting to knock on the doors of the school. And we need to make sure that the protocols that we are all working on and committed to within school are also happening outside of school. That is the only way we're going to be able to keep our classrooms open, is that we all have to continue to mask. And I know how hard it is. I know as a parent how hard it is. As I picked up one of my children last week after school, and a neighbor needed a ride who's been part of his bubble, and I put my mask on. And I embarrassed the heck out of my son that I had my mask on because his friend is sitting in the back seat and he's in there. And I said, guys, put your masks on. They're comfortable with that now because their school is masking. We all have to make sure that we are taking these protocols and we are following these protocols, and the governor's orders, as we have shared, that are out there. We all must be masking, and we all must be masking at all times. We also want to make sure that we are adhering, and our principals are sending out information about the travel restrictions that are coming up, that are already in place. And that please, community members, and we've shared with staff, if you are traveling, we all must adhere to these regulations. And please notify your school and keep your children, staff members. If you can't get the COVID test and follow it, we all need to make sure we're adhering to these rules and following them. These rules are being put in place to help us mitigate and limit the spread so we can keep school open. On the next couple of slides, you will see, so we look at these last couple of slides in the charts and where we are each month, and we see that we have exceeded our guardrails. And in exceeding our guardrails that we had put in place, guardrails that were created for us to open schools. So those guardrails that were created in July and August, and actually they were finally created in August, were created so we could open our schools. And we said we needed guardrails to know when it was going to be time for us to maybe shift. We are now realizing and learning, and especially us as Radnor, being open 8 weeks in a hybrid, we are realizing that our experience being open in hybrid is factoring in as an important criteria, just like those guardrails. And that our experience in hybrid is what's leading us to still remain open in hybrid, because of the experience that we're seeing. And that experience we're seeing is being supported and recommended by our local health department. The Chester County Health Department has the authority over Delaware County and has the authority for if we should need to close due to COVID. They would be the organization that has the authority to close a school district. And I've shared this letter before with our community. And again, just want to reiterate that at this time, our health department is in support of Delaware County schools continuing in our current instructional model because of that experience that we're seeing. That doesn't mean that we're going to avoid a closure in the future. We could very well be looking at returning to virtual in the future because of case counts or because of substantial transmission or substantial cases within our school. We will continue to monitor this day by day, week by week. But right now, this is why we're continuing to stay open in hybrid. We also have on the next slide, it's not just the Chester County Health Department. We have the Bucks County Health Department and their letter that is also supporting school districts and supporting school districts based on experience. The one thing I keep learning about this situation is that we're all learning. We're all learning together. And the guidance from the health department, I think it's in its 8th revision now. The reason the guidance keeps changing and adjusting, it's not a bad thing. It keeps changing and adjusting because we are living through a historical time. We are living through a time that we've never lived before, and our experience each day is adjusting our thinking. It is adjusting health professionals' thinking, doctors, it is adjusting us as educators and school board, and we need to continue to listen to one another, continue to listen to all sides, continue to listen to whatever science and evidence and studies that are coming out as we move forward. But again, the feedback from both Chester County and Bucks County Health Departments is to continue to move forward in hybrid. Continue to the next slide. The other thing that we are sharing, we were sharing monthly, and now that we'll share weekly, we will post weekly right with the other charts. We will also post weekly our experience with our positive cases of COVID. Now, please understand that the cases exposures that are shared, they are the ones that are shared with us or identified with us. It doesn't mean that we are catching all of the cases or we are catching all of the potential asymptomatic cases. You know, one of the concerns, as I shared in my letter with everyone on Sunday, is that we had assumed that schools would be larger spreader at this point. Back in August, many of us had assumed that we would have seen a far greater amount of in-school transmissions. Can we really say for sure what we're experiencing and that these are all the cases? No, but we can say that we have a lot of stringent, very strong mitigation strategies in place that we are continuing enforcing, and that when we detect or when we find a student with a high temperature or a staff member isn't feeling well, we make sure that our nurses are there, we put in the proper supports, we make sure that we are doing the contact tracing. And what our contact tracing that we're doing as a district suggests to us right now is that we are having very limited, almost to no transfer or transmittal in school because of our stringent protocols. That could all change at any time. And you can see as community spread is happening, we are seeing more cases and more exposures that are coming into school as well. And this last slide just is the summary of my letter that I sent out to everyone. We are in a situation now where there are 3 criteria that are guiding us. And in that 3 criteria that are guiding us, as I shared with our community on Sunday, staffing tipped the scales for us this past week, and especially at our middle school and high school. And at no fault of our staff have been extraordinary. I had a teacher sharing with me today that they had a conference with parents today after school as we're doing conferences. And the parent talked to the teacher about how their student has an extra spring in their step the days they're coming into school, and thanking the teachers for being open and hybrid. We are seeing that across our schools, K to 12, that opportunity to be in hybrid is making a difference in the lives of our kids. And I'll tell you, it's making a difference in the lives of our teachers. Our teachers want our kids in, our staff want our kids in, and they're all working so hard to make that possible. But unfortunately, when you see high community spread, it's going to start to impact us. And it impacted us from a staffing perspective this past week. Our administrative team put their heads together. The principals have been amazing with what they figured out to try to keep our schools open this week, especially at the middle school and high school. It was really our middle school where we identified the last couple of days that we had some some exposures and some teachers that unfortunately we don't have a deep pool of substitutes. That's something every school district is experiencing right now. So we are taking that week after Thanksgiving to be virtual for the middle school and high school based on staffing, based on 14-day protocols that we know we have. We anticipate, and we're already looking out to that week after, we anticipate and are planning to be back and return to hybrid for the middle school and high school. That could all change, and I don't know when it will change, any day, but our anticipation is to be back in hybrid, looking at, our numbers right now and looking at where we are. So I want to thank our parents for their patience, and I want to thank our kids. As Avery said, hearing that was a blow. Hearing that we had our athletes all move to virtual, I know was difficult for our athletes, but we needed to take extra steps as we see high community spread. We've been taking those extra steps to try to reduce spread, to try to make sure that we are putting in mitigation. And so we did put all of our athletes at the end of fall sports, all programs, on virtually. And I can't thank our students enough for their flexibility and their willingness to adjust so quickly. On the next slide, I want to move into some more happier news. And this is the time of year that our students, speaking of athletics, make their commitments and their signings for those students who are looking to play sports and participate as collegiate athletes, as collegiate scholars athletes. And we had that opportunity at our high school where those students who are committing, you can see the students' faces and all of their schools that they are committing to be involved in athletics. And I just want to give a congratulations to all those student athletes for their making their official college commitments. I also want to take a time to thank our coaches. When we talk about education, education happens in our classrooms. It happens in our extracurricular activities. It happens during marching band, during the musical, during athletics. And that education and those experiences for our students, it's incredible. And I want to thank everyone who makes it possible for our student athletes to excel and for all our students to excel in their activities. So congratulations to those student athletes. We have a lot to be grateful for this time of year. As much as we are living history right now and living in a pandemic and adjusting to it each day, we do here in Radnor have so much to be grateful for. I am particularly grateful for the volunteers that provided the 28th annual Thanksgiving dinner for Radnor High School, where they provided for more than 110 residents, something that normally we hosted in our cafeteria. But this year it was done different. Instead of a sit-down dinner, it was grab-and-go meals. The district-wide Thanksgiving basket that so many in our community, our PTO organizes, and so many in our community supports with our PTO, collected more than 160 baskets filled with Thanksgiving dinner essentials for Radnor families in need. We want to thank them so much for all their efforts for putting this together. And Ithan Elementary School PTO Thanksgiving food collection, with our fifth graders. This page could go on with so many things that are happening that our community, even in the midst of a pandemic, is thinking about others and supporting others. So we're so grateful for all of everyone's work and volunteering. The next slide, we want to thank, and before I invite some others to join us, I want to thank Heather Riley for a donation of a baby grand piano to the school district. And then I want to thank our Radnor Education Foundation for an incredible donation to support technology and to support online learning. Our Radnor Education Foundation has been a partner with our school district for so many years now. They work tirelessly to raise funds, working with our community, and our community collectively supports the Education Foundation. And when things shifted this year, our administrators met and sat with the foundation, working both with Brian Pugh and Teji Brennan, working with them, established this opportunity for the foundation to provide $66,000 to support our district as we move, education more online, using more technology. And these dollars have really made a difference. So you can see pictured in the picture is Mr. Bechtold, Dr. Hand, and Mr. Dukevich, who were instrumental in working with the Ed Foundation. I think Brian and Teji may be joining us. I can't see though while we're sharing a screen. So
No, I can see Mr. Brian and Teji Brennan are here. So welcome to both of you.
Oh, and Brian and Teji, so we can stop sharing the screen for a minute. I just want to welcome Brian and Teji, and just again, thank you both for your leadership. Thank you for what you've provided, to us as a district, but thank you also just for the constant support and the partnership. School districts can't be successful without a commitment and support from the community, and the Radnor Education Foundation and our community and the support you provide us, it's extraordinary. So I want to just thank you, Brian, and please, Brian and Teji, give you a moment if you want to share anything. I don't know if we let you know we're inviting you, Brian.
I did get the heads up, so thank you all for the time, and thank you for the kind words. It's a pleasure to be part of this group on this call tonight, but more importantly, I love being involved with Radnor Educational Foundation and the support of the school district. So I'm Brian Pugh, officially president of Radnor Educational Foundation. I've been with the foundation for a little over 4 years now. I've had the pleasure to meet many of you that are on this call. Having fifth graders in Radnor Elementary School, I get the sense, and I get exactly what Ken was mentioning, your superintendent bachelor, my apologies. My kids can't wait to get on the bus and get off the bus. They love seeing their friends. And so a true heartfelt thank you for all you guys are doing to keep our schools open, keeping our kids safe, and keeping our students educated in the way we need to. I don't want to take a lot of time. I do know I also want to turn some time over to our director of Radnor Educational Foundation, Teji Brennan, for additional comments around the grant that was previously made. So thank you.
Thanks, Brian. I thank you, Ken, and also I want to say thanks to Dan and Sean and Scott Han also. I don't know if you were aware, but this grant that we just funded is the largest grant in REF's 25 years. And we are so proud of the fact that it will impact every student in the district. As our mission states, we support enrichment, excellence, and innovation for our Radnor students. And we believe that this grant in particular really fulfills all of those. We're very excited that this grant helps teachers and students in the current virtual and hybrid learning environment now and for years to come. I mean, it's the way that it impacts all of the classrooms is just really terrific to see. And so we're incredibly proud to partner with the district on this. And then I also want to throw out special thanks to Dan and Sean, who worked with Kara Cleffy, our grants chair, and me for the last several months to understand how we can partner to best help our school community this year, because it is, as we've all been talking about, such a remarkable year that that we knew that we were going to have to adapt, just as we had asked the students and the teachers to do. And so they've been a great help in just getting us to understand where the needs are and how we can fill those. So we're thrilled to be partners, and thank you for this time, and we're looking forward to a really great year.
Oh, I can't thank you again enough. And I know that, you, besides supporting through the grants, there's a great deal of fundraising that goes in, involved, and reach out to our community. And I want to thank all our community members who give to the Ed Foundation. I think our fundraising will be a little bit different this year. There's many different events that you have. I think the highlight is often the yearly silent auction and gala event. Luckily, they don't have to endure hearing me do the silent auction, which is wonderful. But I know that our foundation, Teji and Brian, have shared with me some other exciting things they're trying to do to reach out to the communities to continue to support our schools. So we look forward to continuing to partner with you, and thank you for all that you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you both for being here tonight on behalf of the board. And, we are so grateful. So we look forward to, we'll be approving that officially on tonight's agenda.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes. Mr. Batchelor, do you have anything further for your superintendent report?
No, I like to leave on a positive note. So that concludes my report. And thank you again, Brian and Teji, for joining us. That concludes my report.
Thanks. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
You too. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
All righty. Well, from one piece of good news to another, I'm going to turn our recognition, item 5.1, over to Ms. Duffy.
And before we turn it over to Mrs. Duffy, I'm going to just jump in there. So our recognition tonight is for Anya Chen, who's been selected to All National Honors Ensemble. And so before Mrs. Duffy has an opportunity to read the recognition, we actually have a little special treat. We have not only Anya with us, but we have an opportunity to play and share a recording of Anya playing the cello. So if we could have that first. And Anya, I hope we prepped you and told you we were doing that.
Yes, I do know.
Good. Anything you want to say before we play it? We're excited to hear it.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the introduction. I'm really glad that you guys had me. This is an excerpt from Elgar's Fourth Movement. It's a cello concerto in E minor. So hopefully you enjoy it.
Wow, that was very impressive. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
So, Radnor High School senior Anya Chen was recently selected to the National Association for Music Education's All National Honors Ensemble. She will be a member of the cello selection of the All National Sympathy Orchestra during a virtual all-national honors ensemble program from January 7th through the 9th, 2021. The All-National Honors Ensemble consists of a concert band, symphony orchestra, mixed choir, jazz ensemble, guitar ensemble, and modern band. Students were selected through an audition process. District, regional, state, and national auditions were held during the 2019-2020 school year to determine the musicians selected for the 2020 all-national ensembles. The virtual all-national honors ensemble program will include several rehearsals with the 2020 conductors, workshops with the renowned clinicians, and each ensemble will create a final recorded performance which will be premiered online. The National Association for Music Education, among the world's largest arts education organizations, is the only association that addresses all aspects of music education by advocating at the local, state, and national levels, providing resources for teachers, parents, and administrators, hosting professional development events, and offering a variety of opportunities for students and teachers. The superintendent, along with the school board and the entire Radnor community, congratulates Anya, her parents, and her teachers for this outstanding accomplishment. Congratulations.
Thank you. I would like to thank my teachers, Jennifer G. Jin, who taught me from the time I started cello in when I was 7 up until the beginning of my junior year. And she helped me a lot with technique and phrasing. And also my current teacher, Udi Bar David, who also helped me a lot and whom I wouldn't have made it without him. So thank you to them both. It's amazing to have finally made it in my senior year, the last year possible. And I'm glad to have made it, and I'm looking forward to the virtual conference. Hopefully it'll be still fun, even though it can't be in person, but I'm sure it will. But thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the recognition. I really appreciate it.
That's great, Anya. I'm glad you could join us, and thank you, Mrs. Duffy. Okay, we're going to move into our public comment section, and tonight I believe we'll be possibly doing things a little bit differently, but for public comment, the board shall provide an opportunity at each regular business meeting for eligible participants to comment on matters of concern, official action, or deliberation which are or may be before the board prior to any official action taking place. We have eligible participants are residents of the district, taxpayers of the district, people with persons with a legal or contractual right to address the board, or persons recognized by the presiding officer as having a special interest such that addressing the board would be appropriate. Eligible participants must be recognized by the presiding officer and preface their comments by an announcement of their name and address. During virtual meetings, and this will be tonight, public comment by email must include your street name, your street address, town, and topic to be addressed. New for this evening, if you have individuals who are interested in attending our meeting and delivering public comment directly, there was an opportunity to pre-register. This is all outlined on the agenda. And so we do ask that, according to board policy 006, individual comments should be limited to not more than 4 minutes. And should you be unable to attend our meeting, you may submit your comment by email to boardcomments@rtsd.org or writing to Mr. Michael Petiti, Radnor Township School District, 135 South Wayne Avenue, Wayne, Pennsylvania, 19087. So we'll see how tonight's Zoom, we've had a lot of discussion at the board level that although we had remained virtual, and it seems like now that was a prudent decision as the community spread has risen significantly. But we did want to try to find a way for participants in the community to join us live if they so wish. So I don't know if we have any residents or any public commenters, Mr. Petiti, who would like to join our meeting at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Stern. We do not have any takers tonight for registering to join us. However, we will continue to offer that opportunity throughout this evening, so those that want to register, if they're inclined during the meeting, can still join us up until the end of the meeting, and we will have this availability going forward at our board meeting. So we do have 3 written in comments though, so I could start to read those.
That would be great if you'd start with that. And again, if everyone can bear with us, we're going to try this new process if anybody ends up joining us. And it really is all in an effort to have the community feel like they're participating in and be with us in times when we can't all be together. So go ahead, Mr. Petiti. Thank you.
Okay. First comment is from Nicole Stevenson, 219 Sugartown Road in Wayne. I would like to commend the excellent way in which Wayne Elementary School in Radnor Township has reopened the school. I am comfortable and believe wholeheartedly the children and staff are safe. I was concerned before the school opened about the damages that could result because students were constantly on the computers and they had no way to socialize with their classmates. I was also concerned about the psychological damage that could occur because the students were not attending school. But it is obvious that the leadership as well as the staff have worked hard to keep the school clean and disinfected, and the students' distancing is excellent and all people have masks. I feel Wayne Elementary should be a national role model for allowing students to return to school so they can learn, allowing the teachers and other staff members to help the students. So thank you for reopening the school and giving the students the opportunity to learn to see their teachers and friends in person. Gary Cohen, 780 Fawn Hill Road. First, I want to wish all the school board members, Superintendent Batchelor, the rest of the administration, all the teachers, and everyone else who works in the Radnor schools a happy and healthy Thanksgiving. Second, continued thanks to all who are focused on providing the best educational process possible as we continue to deal with COVID-19 and all the challenges that it creates. Thankfully, we are now, I hope, past all the election madness from earlier this month. One thing that is clear is that there is significant divisiveness in our nation and to a lesser extent locally as well. We really need to be focused on ways that we can come back closer together as a nation and as a community, finding solutions that can be supported by the vast majority of the community. While there is some disagreement in approaches related to the Radnor High School nickname, I think a vast majority of the community would feel much better about the nickname being decided upon by the full student body, not by school board fiat. This means that we need to let the student body deliberate amongst themselves and pick what they think is the most appropriate name, whether that be to continue to use the name Raiders or to pick something different. If we cannot trust our students to make a wise and appropriate decision on the nickname, we have done a poor job as parents, educators, and community in raising and educating our children. While ultimately some people will be unhappy with whatever the students decide, all can take comfort in the fact that the students got the chance to exercise their voice and their judgment, and that we've already taken the most important steps to rectifying inappropriate use of Native American imagery with the removal of Native American imagery in the mascot and logo, and with the development of a more comprehensive educational module on Native American history. We are still working on that, right? For what it is worth, taking a look at other communities around the country, there are two communities that I know of besides Radnor that have considered changing their nickname from Raiders. One hasn't chosen a new name yet, and the other decided to keep the name Raiders and to change their mascot and logo. At the same time, one high school changed their nickname from an offensive Native American themed nickname to Raiders, and another changed their name to Red Raiders. For reference, there are in excess of 200 high schools with the nickname Raiders, so most communities believe Raiders to be a very viable nickname, even in communities where there was a past history of association of the name with Native American imagery. There are many more examples, such as Westchester Henderson Warriors or William and Mary the Tribe, with names that are often or always associated with Native Americans, unlike Raiders, that also made the decision to keep the name but rebrand. Whatever our students determine is best should be their decision, but I bring this data up to make it clear that it is an extreme stretch to say that the name Raiders is a priori unsuitable as a nickname, and we should avoid extreme solutions if we want to bring our community back together. From Rob King, RTEA President. On behalf of the teachers of the Radnor Township Education Association, I want to reach out to say a few words to the school board and administration this evening. In spite of recent and concerning surge in coronavirus cases across our region and the nation at large, we have had a good couple of months of in-person hybrid learning. It has been difficult and challenging for all parties involved. We want to thank the school board for its long hours of work and what must seem like endless meetings. In particular, we want to thank the district for several memoranda of understanding that will be of great help to our members. We want to thank the administration for their tireless efforts over these many months to keep our students and staff safe during these challenging times, also for creating a trial run of several asynchronous days to help students and staff connect. I also want to thank all district employees whose invaluable work and contributions make it possible to do what we do in our classrooms: the nurses, secretaries, educators, bus drivers, the custodial staff, the cafeteria workers, and the maintenance crews. Lastly, I want to thank my fellow teachers for their hard work and commitment to providing quality instruction to the Radnor community while doing everything in their power to keep students and each other safe. We are adapting each and every day, and we will continue to work tirelessly in the face of constantly changing circumstances in order to deliver the superior education that our students and their families expect, be that in hybrid conditions or fully virtual. The teachers of RTEA also have a request for the community. Please, please, please continue to follow the simple guidelines issued by the CDC: masking, social distancing, avoiding large crowds, and hand washing. We want nothing more than to teach your children in our classrooms, and we appreciate your continued concern and support in keeping our community and schools as safe as can be. Finally, regarding the agenda item 8.2 dealing with the reduction in physical education offerings, RTEA acknowledges the time and energy spent by administration and our members in exploring and planning new and exciting electives that allow our students to engage in activities that will improve their state of mind, body, and spirit by decreasing the constant screen time that plagues our society now more than ever. Nevertheless, while we respect the work done thus far, we are asking the school board to address the following concerns. 1, the presentation of the health and wellness report has understandably been postponed several times due to the pandemic. Since health/PE are a vital component to the plan, we urge you to consider those recommendations before deciding on any program changes. 2, RTEA sees the new health/PE offerings as exciting and possibly life-changing for many students. We favor a plan that will make these new physical education courses mandatory in some form for our 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. Providing such instruction will expose students to learning opportunities they may not be able to experience outside of school. 3, although RTEA is aware that we are fortunate enough to have many student athletes, there are many students who may not play a sport year-round or students who do not play a sport at all. Therefore, would it be possible to reconsider the proposal to reduce the PE requirement? 4, in closing, given the unknowns of the COVID-19 pandemic and the changing face of education that is creating social and emotional challenges for our students, should we be changing this requirement now? Is this what is best for children? Should we consider further input from the committee, staff, and community before making a 75% reduction in very important programming? Thank you very much for listening and for your consideration. Have a happy Thanksgiving, everyone. As Ken said in a recent email, even in these times, we can all find something to be thankful for. And that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Petiti. Okay, so we're going to start with our reports from board committees. And first up is the curriculum committee report. Ms. Solomon?
Thank you. The curriculum committee met for a 2-hour meeting on November 17th. Items on your consent agenda tonight that were presented to us include the donations of the donation of the baby grand piano by Heather Riley, which we want to thank her for that, and the Radnor Education Foundation donation of $66,000 for enhancements to technology in the district. And so that also is an amazing and generous gift from the foundation. Also on your consent agenda tonight is a list of the 2021 new student clubs and also the 2021 student clubs that are being renewed. Then we had 4 items on the agenda. First up, which is also on your consent agenda tonight, is the assessment calendar. Next was the 2021-2022 instructional calendar, a discussion of that. And then lastly, we had a discussion of PE for athletes, which will be the presentation tonight for further discussion by the entire board. Oh my gosh, I forgot the most important one. At the end of our meeting, we had a discussion of the annual data reports, which is a really informative document. It's several pages of information about how students are doing, well, really everything about our district. And our administration was able to update that for this year with the information available. However, we don't have the standardized testing from the state that we often use to assess how we're doing. So that is one more thing that COVID has sort of thrown a monkey wrench into, but we really do appreciate the time that was put into updating all that information. Our next meeting will be December 8th, not December 1st, as was announced in our curriculum committee meeting. It will be on the December 8th at 5 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Solomon. Next up, we have our facilities committee meeting. Ms. Dunn?
Good evening. The Facilities Committee also met on the evening of November 17th, and we had a refreshingly short meeting. In that, we only had one major agenda item, and it was an update on the feasibility study for members of the public who haven't heard about that, or the board who've forgotten. This is the project where we're going to, we've engaged outside experts to help us review all of the facilities owned by the district and help us to set up a 10 to 15-year plan, which will allow us to plan for changes and upgrades. A major component of that is also a review of our student population and size and potential for growth over the next 10 or 20 years, so that we can be properly prepared should there be a significant change in student population. The refreshing thing was we had time to really delve into that because we only had the one item on the agenda. We are just in the very nascent phases of that. A steering committee with members of the community and members of the board and the administration will be meeting in the next few months. And so we'll get more updates at the facilities committee meeting in the future. We also are taking a break from facilities for the month of December, and our next meeting will actually be scheduled for January 19th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. The only potential for other meetings might be if there's some kind of need to meet before that for the infrastructure project.
Thank you. The Finance Committee met on Tuesday, November 10th. And on tonight's agenda, you will see a number of items for the consent agenda, our monthly financial reports, items for disposal, donation, or to be sold. We have 2 contracts that are being added to the agenda for approval. And then we also heard an update on the draft audit, which is actually resulting in an item on our agenda tonight for the reallocation of the fund balance. And there's been a slight change since the Finance Committee meeting, which Ms. Deco will walk our board through this evening. The Finance Committee also was able to hear a first look for the 2021-2022 medical rates, which bit of good news. It seems like there's a slight decrease in those first look medical rates. So that was some nice news to hear for our conversations on the budget that will be beginning shortly. And then we also had an update on the COVID-19 expenditures and grants that we've received to date. There's been a lot of discussion in our board publicly about how expensive this whole process of COVID has been. And we've been very fortunate to secure a number of grants. And so we had a review of that in a meeting. There's no action to be taken on that tonight, but we did get a review of that in the Finance Committee meeting. So that was, good for us to get a handle on. And our next Finance Committee meeting will be Tuesday, December 1st at 6 p.m. Okay, next up we have
I'm sorry, Susan, I'm sorry. I omitted one item that I was supposed to highlight, was also on the consent agenda. We had a discussion about another student survey, and that is on the consent agenda tonight as well. I forgot to mention that.
Oh, sure. Great. Thank you, Lydia. Appreciate that. Okay, let's see. Next up, we have our GRCC, or is it Policy Committee? Policy. I guess we generally do Policy Committee. I have to go back to that. A Policy Committee report. Ms. Goldman?
The Policy Committee met on Tuesday, November 17th, and there are actually 3 policies on the consent agenda for first reading tonight. The first one is Policy 248, which is harassment. As a reminder, this was revised to comply with the new Title IX regulations for school districts, and it is a student policy. The other policy on the consent agenda for first reading is Policy 815. That is the acceptable use of internet and network resources policy. This policy was identified for review or revision as part of the routine review of the policy manual. And due to the pandemic and all of the instruction that's occurring online, it was recommended by administration to review this policy and ensure it reflects current and best practices. And the third policy up, for our first reading tonight is Policy 829, personal electronic communication devices, and similar to 815, again, because there's so much technology in use during the pandemic, administration felt it was advisable to review this policy to ensure it reflects current and best practices. There's also a policy on the agenda for a second reading tonight, and that's Policy 104, non-discrimination in employment and contract practices. Two quick reminders about this policy. It was another one that needed to be revised to comply with the changes to Title IX. And also a minor change was made to the title of this policy, and it will now be called Equal Opportunity and Non-Discrimination in Employment and Contract Practices. We had three other items on the November policy agenda that we did not have time to discuss, but they will come back at our December policy committee meeting next week. The first one is policy 348. It's currently entitled Unlawful Harassment. It's the staff version of 248 that's on your agenda for tonight. And there are two other staff versions of it, 448 and 548. Those are going to be recommended to be repealed, and all matters related to harassment will fall in one employee policy when we're finished reviewing those. The next policy committee meeting will actually be next week, Tuesday, December 1st at 5 p.m.
Thank you. And then Government Relations and Communications Committee, Dr. Babson?
Sure. So we met on Tuesday, November 10th. We discussed four main topics. We discussed new technology for submitting and receiving public comments, which Michael alluded to earlier. We talked a little bit about state and federal education legislation currently relevant to Radnor. We had an update on local election results. And we talked a good deal about teacher certification processes. We talked about long-term subs, the certifications required for them. We talked about, or a concern was addressed about, whether our teacher quality might be impacted or be affected by the need for teachers, emergency certifications, et cetera, due to COVID and moving to in-person learning. So our next meeting will be tentatively scheduled for Tuesday, January 12th at 7. That's not set in stone yet, at which point the administration will present a plan, or should intend to present a plan for renaming the Radnor mascot, that process.
Oh, there you go. Alrighty, so now we're going to move right into our priority action discussion item. And up first is 8.1, which is the authorize the execution and submission of the required attestation form to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I believe, Mr. Batchelor, you referenced this earlier tonight in your superintendent remarks. This agenda item was added to our agenda literally at 3 o'clock this afternoon. It's a result of the order that was put out by the Pennsylvania Secretary of Health yesterday afternoon, I believe, late yesterday afternoon. So why don't you begin to walk us through this, and then we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Yes, so yesterday we received from the state of Pennsylvania this order for our school district, and it only applies to public school districts because the state has required public school districts to set up a health and safety plan. So my understanding right now from the order from yesterday, it does not apply to private school districts. That we have to attest to the mitigation steps that we are taking, that we are adhering first and foremost to the masking order that the governor has put forward, which we were doing already as a district, but adhering to that, and that we are also adhering to and looking at those recommendations that they have provided for communities moving forward. So we have to, as superintendent and board president, need to attest to and identify whether we are in hybrid or whether we are in virtual learning. We would look to check that we are in hybrid. The definition for this requirement is that hybrid is, if any students are coming in at any point, you would be in hybrid. This does not impact our situation for staffing for the week after Thanksgiving, where we're going virtual for the middle school and high school for just that week. We can still attest to being in hybrid. We can attest to the mitigation strategies that we have in place. If a district is unable to attest to those mitigation strategies, the district or is putting itself virtual, then you would be virtual, and you would be also required not to have any activities moving forward as well. So this is information that just came yesterday. This is information I look at this, everybody's trying to digest it and understand it. I wasn't in the room when it was created. I'm learning about it with all the superintendents and our solicitors yesterday. But as I read through all the documents, I really think this is a document where the governor is saying to the Commonwealth, to the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, you need to take seriously these mitigation standards. You need to make sure you are masking and really doing what we have been doing in Radnor. I would say that the piece that goes beyond our four walls, and this isn't this, but this is just an opportunity for me to get on my soapbox, and similar to what we even heard Rob King share, is that we got to do it outside of school. Our kids are accustomed to masking in school. We've got to have them masked, and we've got to be doing the things outside of school to keep it from getting into the school. So we've got to be doing these things beyond just school. And I think that's the thing that we can't say enough to our community if we want to try to keep our classrooms open. But for this particular item, this is the superintendent and board members have to attest to what they're doing. And as I read it, it is something that's designed to make sure that districts across the Commonwealth are doing exactly what we have been doing. More will come as we learn more about this, as our health department responds. I had a meeting today with the health department about this. I think we are in very strong footing and a good place with our mitigation strategies, with the support of our health department to commit to continue in hybrid, to deal with what we're dealing with staffing the week after Thanksgiving, but to continue to move forward. So our recommendation would be tonight for the board, to approve this as written, that authorize the president of the school board and the superintendent to execute and submit the attached form. It is required to the Secretary of Health by November 30th. So we were just lucky to have a board meeting tonight, and we could put this on the agenda. I know a lot of school districts are scrambling to try to figure out when they would send it and when they would meet with their board to discuss it.
Okay, Mr. Batchelor, thank you. If anyone is able to open the document, anyone in the public or even our board members who we literally received this late this afternoon, there's a lot of hyperlinks to other forms and other pieces of information. And so I appreciate you kind of giving us a high level, explanation of really what we're talking about here. I'd like to open up I don't know if any board members have questions, if they'd like to jump in, if there's anything to answer at the, or ask of the administration about this, recognizing we all just got this. And like everything that has been with COVID so far, Mr. Batchelor, I think, we can all agree that, more changes, more information, more, things thrown at us. This is a good, I would say, I think there's a good intention here. It's trying to really convey the seriousness of the situation throughout our state and throughout our country. But I do want to open it up in the event board members may have questions or not. Any comments, any thoughts? Okay, so, oh, there we go. All righty. Knowing I have to sign this, I guess, it will be for me to put the motion out there. I need to read the exact, I'm going to make a motion and then I'll ask for a second that the board authorizes the board president and superintendent to execute and submit the attached attestation form to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania as required by there's a slight typo there, but as required by the November 23rd, 2020 order of the Pennsylvania Secretary of Health. So I've put forth that motion. If someone would give me a second.
Second.
Second from Ms. Solomon. And actually now we can have any board discussion. I don't know if there is board discussion at all. Yes, Dr. Babson.
I just have a question. So
Sure.
the letter of attestation, it basically is a statement that we are attesting to following the new order that was presented by or handed down from the Secretary of Health yesterday and the governor. Is that correct?
We are attesting to whether or not we are in, first off, that we are masking, so that we have to be making sure that we are masking, all of our students and staff. Then we are attesting to whether or not we are delivering instruction in hybrid, or whether we're in some sort of in-person, or if we are delivering instruction virtually, and that we have, are reviewing and adhering to recommendations as put forth. Mr. Christofko, our solicitor, he's on with us. Mike, am I missing anything? Is that a good summary of it?
Yeah, that's right. The form basically has two boxes that you check. One is if you're 100% virtual, and one if any students at all are coming for in-person instruction. If any students are attending in person, you have to also then, by signing the form, you agree to comply with the new masking order, and you agree to comply with the new guidance on when to close schools upon the occurrence of positive COVID tests within the school. There's a pretty detailed chart that the Department of Education and Department of Health put out that explains, depending upon what level of transmission the county is in, how big the school is, the number of people who are infected, what needs to be done. So that's basically what we're doing. So because there are students coming in person, we have to check the box that says we're hybrid. And then at the same time, we're confirming that we're complying with those orders that were just entered in the guidance on how to address positive cases.
Thank you, Mike. If I may follow up, recently there was a press release. It was put forth, I think, last Thursday. And I think it was a joint press release among the governors in the region. And there was a statement that I just wanted to read. A statement from that press release was, quote, medical research as well as the data from northeastern states from across the country and from around the world make clear that in-person learning is safe when the appropriate protections are in place, even in communities with high transmission rates. So I guess I'm kind of wondering a press release can't really make policy, but I'm just kind of wondering how that public statement from the governor squares with this order. Or even the, previously, Ken, you had asked for guardrails from the state, and the state provided those, i.e., what are the metrics that will guide transition between phases? And the state has a category called substantial transmission. And one of the criteria are 100 cases per week per 100,000 people. We're far above that. So, and that would basically gloss to what that press release said is high, right? So where I'm going with this is, if what that press release statement was saying was that even in the case of substantial transmission, that as long as we have our protocols in place, it just as appropriate measures, then we're okay. And I'm just kind of, Mike, wondering if you have an idea of how that statement squares with these lawful orders that were put out yesterday.
Well, sure. I mean, nothing in the order is inconsistent with the idea that education is safe, provided that appropriate standards are followed, even in areas of high transmission. Because if you look at the guidance that was, one of the things that we're agreeing to comply with is what to do when there are COVID tests or COVID positive cases that occur within the school community. And the guidance explains what you do in circumstances where your local community has low, moderate, or substantial levels of transmission. And that guidance doesn't say switch to 100% virtual. What that guidance says is that depending upon the number of people who test positive, it impacts what your response would be and how much cleaning and how long you should close the facilities for to accommodate contact tracing and the like. And even in the guidance itself, it says that the number of days that they put down might even be shorter if everything can get done on a quicker basis, the cleaning and the contact tracing and items like that. So I think that that's consistent with the idea that the state and the Department of Health believes that in-person instruction is safe, provided that the guidance put forth about masking and about social distancing and the like is being followed.
Okay, thanks. Because I mean, if we're basically attesting to, that we're following these orders, et cetera, and it's all sounds like a good step in, a step in the right direction. But, if we're only testing, if we're not testing everyone, or if we're not doing surveillance testing to sort of comb for asymptomatic cases, how do we really know what's actually happening in our schools in terms of transmission? We don't, basically. So I'm just wondering how that will affect. I don't know if it will affect this. Ken, do you know?
I mean, from a legal perspective, what you're talking about doing that sort of surveillance testing is not required under any of the orders.
Okay.
So from that perspective, it won't impact, but I can let Mr. Batchelor explain from an operational standpoint.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
And there is a lot of discussion about, providing districts with some type of testing capabilities, but we've been having that discussion now for many weeks. So there's still a chance that we may be seeing some antigen tests being provided to school districts in Delaware County. Those tests, though, would not be used for trying to do surveillance. Those tests would be initially being used for when there is somebody who is symptomatic and just trying to expedite identifying symptomatic and positive, cases. We believe that could be in the next couple of weeks that we could be receiving those. As to surveillance testing, there is nothing that is a requirement. It is something that we have looked at length, and we have contacted many different, of health providers in the area, trying to see if there is a way that we ourselves could do some type of testing, all of the challenges with it. And there's a lot of challenges with the antigen test. You and I have talked about this. The antigen test, if you're not symptomatic, is not very reliable. The PCR test that you would, we'd be much more comfortable using for surveillance testing. The antigen test would be maybe more comfortable if we did it all the time. But we're still struggling, I think, as a community, as a state, and as this area, we're still struggling with, getting testing. I mean, the struggles people are having right now to get tested to go out of state or to return in state is been a challenge in the last few days.
If I may say, this is a fun fact, or not so fun fact, but PA is dead last in per capita testing in our country. Out of 50 states, we are dead last. Just food for thought. In other words, are we really, when the health department says that, we're not seeing, the majority of cases are coming from outside schools, there's really no solid evidence base for that. Jean Kasner and I had a very friendly conversation about this, and she more or less agreed with that. That because there isn't surveillance testing being done, we really don't, and because a lot of kids are asymptomatic. I don't want to get off topic though. This is about, Mike, you answered my question basically, so I'll refrain.
And Mike, I just want to clarify, interestingly, Ken and I are actually going to be the only two attesting to this statement. So believe me when I say I'm reading the document really carefully, and I will probably reread it because you guys know how I can be about documents to which I put my signature. And tonight's conversation is about, affirming and making sure the board and the public understand this document is out there. We need to sign it. We need to sign it by November 30th, or we would be required to go virtual. Mr. Christofko, correct me if I say anything that's incorrect here. And Ken, it would, the reality is when you read through, and there are a lot of hyperlinks on this thing, our Radnor Township's protocols that we had the committee that worked so hard. We spent hours over the summer. Our protocols are very stringent, and we don't have to make a lot of changes. I imagine throughout the Commonwealth, there are probably districts that will now be required to make changes to their health and safety plan as a result of this order. you know, I don't, Mike, do you, I don't, I mean, I'm reading through it. I'm not seeing anything that we would have to make a change to our health and safety plan. I think other districts may have to. I mean, I can't speak for them. They make their choices, but you know, this order is pretty clear.
What about mask breaks, if I may?
It doesn't mention mask breaks. It mentions that you have to keep the masks on a bit. And if you're indoors and if you can't keep a sustained physical distance of 6 feet away from, you know, other people, even when you're outside. So I think, Ken, Mr. Batchelor, you've been making some adjustments to how we're handling mask breaks. You were doing it prior to this order,
Right.
just in the face of the rising community spread. You know, that was kind of the update I understood, or I think I heard in one of your updates recently.
Yes, yes. And you know, there's still a reality that, you know, when kids eat, you know, their masks are going to be off when they eat. So we need to make sure other mitigation, other things are in place, you know, when it comes to distancing and all of those other pieces that we do. So yes, but that is something that we have already looked at reducing as a district.
Yeah, and I do just want to let you know, I don't know if it's a consequence of my iPad, but there's a link to one of the exceptions that's not working. So can I, you know, and it's a technical thing that may just be my iPad when I go try to read it. But, you know, there are exceptions, Andrew, in the, you know, but it's all the things that we were already looking at. Again, Mr. Christopher, this is everything I've read so far. And, you know, so this is what we need to do. And I think the point of the story is we need the community. What did I say to you last week, Ken, from Jerry Maguire? Help me, help you. We need the community to do what they can do to help all of us. But frankly, our board's been saying that for months. This is actually a statement that we were saying months ago. We were saying it months ago when we were making the, you know, talking about the difficult decision to start the school year virtually. And there were a lot of people who were really upset with the decision. And the reality is this has always been a conversation that our board has made to say, we need the community to help us. We need you to do what you can do to help us, help you. There's nothing that's really dramatically different about this. Okay, so I'm gonna, unless there's further comment or discussion, I'm gonna call the vote. Yes, Lydia.
Yeah, just really quickly. I'm sorry. This just came to me quickly. I can't remember what this says about sports. Is that involved in this in any way, or this is just in school instruction?
It didn't reference to I mean, again, jump in. If we don't sign this, all of our extracurricular, we would have to go virtual and all of our extracurricular activities would have to be halted. It doesn't reference, if we sign this and we agree to abide by the regulations, it didn't reference extracurricular activities.
But it means that we're following these same protocols in our extracurriculars, correct?
Mr. Batchelor?
Yes, I mean, it would mean we're following these protocols. They're just like we've had exceptions for situations. There could be exceptions, but yes, it means that, you know, we should be looking to follow those.
Well, no, I thought it got rid of any exceptions. I thought this gets rid of exceptions to the mask order and the social distancing.
There are still some exceptions in the mask order. But it narrowed it to say that the one big exception that it eliminated was the indoor greater than 6 feet exception, and it said that they don't care now if there are two people indoors and they're 100 feet apart, as long as they're in the same indoor space, they need to be wearing a mask. So that's the big exception that was eliminated. But there are still other exceptions in the order for you know, people that have medical conditions that can't wear masks, situations where wearing a mask would be unhealthy or dangerous. For example, a swimmer, situations whereby, you know, very, very young children, which normally wouldn't come up with the school district, but, you know, shouldn't wear masks as well. All that's still in the order. But the one big major exception that was eliminated was this idea that if you're indoors and you're more than 6 feet apart, you can go without a mask. They pretty much eliminated that.
And to that extent, there is a comment, Lydia, if you hit this on the face coverings are required, it's in one of the sections, participating in indoor physical activity in a gym, fitness center, or group fitness class where another person or persons who aren't members of your family, you have to wear a mask irrespective of the physical distance. So, I mean,
we were already doing that.
That's the thing. Radnor already had some of the most stringent, particularly as it related to our extracurriculars and our athletics. And
what I'm seeing is now what we've been doing with athletics, others are starting to do as well with athletics.
Yeah. Okay, so with that, I will say all those in favor, aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and all those opposed? Oh, Liz, I don't see you. I don't know if Liz's camera is frozen or not. I'm not able to see her vote. Liz?
I
barely.
Oh, there you're back.
So Liz, if you could just clarify, were you an aye or an nay?
An aye.
Okay, so the motion passes 8-1. All righty. Thank you, everybody. We'll move right on to our next priority action item.
7-1.
It's
Sorry.
7-1.
7-1.
Bradley's
Oh,
not
that's
here.
right. I'm so sorry. And let me just make note, I apologize. Mr. Moore was unable to attend our meeting tonight. This is our first vote of the evening. So he was unfortunately and regretfully not able to join us tonight. So the motion passes 7-1. That's right. Thank you for that correction. Let's see, the next item on our priority action item agenda is 8.2, request to reduce the high school physical education requirements. The recommended action is that the board approves the reduction of the physical education requirement for students at Radnor High School from 2.0 credits to 0.5. Students who cannot pass a basic swimming test will also be required to take a beginning swimmer course for 0.25 credits. This action is in response to the work of the PE for Athletics Committee. Do we have a motion and a second?
I'll make a motion.
And do I have a second? And a second for Mr. Jubileer. So a motion for Ms. Solomon and a second for Mr. Jubileer. Mr. Batchelor, who do you have doing our presentation tonight?
We'll turn it over to Mr. Bechtold to begin. And I know Mrs. Kevgis, our high school principal, is with us as well. And Mr. Bechtold, Dan, our Director of Secondary Teaching and Learning.
Well, welcome, Mr. Bechtold and Mrs. Kevgis. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all the valiant efforts. Everybody's been working together for what you guys were able to accomplish this week. I know it was challenging and we appreciate it. So let's get underway.
All right, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'll run through quickly run through the PowerPoint that explains a little bit about what the PE for Athletes Committee did, and then Mrs. Kevgis, I'll turn it over to her to run through the handout that speaks about the plans for moving forward. So, the committee for the PE for Athletes was formed this year and started its work in January. So we met January 29th, February 12th, February 26th, and again on May 14th. With the goal of, or with the purpose of identifying how much PE and to what degree students need at Radnor High School. Our goals were to identify some of the best practices for PE, what we offer, what other districts offer, and discuss areas for improvement. One of the things that we were able to start with was we were fortunate to recently have an audit done for physical education. And so we got to start with what did we value as a district. And that was a really good starting point for us as a committee. And then we looked at the PE requirements and where the requirements for Radnor High School came from. So our PE requirements at Radnor High School are derived from board policy, specifically 217 on graduation requirements. And I have cut here from the page 1 of the AR. You can see that We have 2 credits of PE that is required, and 1 credit of health that is required for students to earn a diploma from Radnor High School. This is also what feeds our student handbook. So student handbook, the requirements in there come from school board policy. The course offerings for physical education and health department are listed here by grade. So last year when we were going through the study, you had 1 credit of 9th grade that was health and wellness, or 1 credit in 10th grade of health and swimming, and then a half credit requirement in 11th grade for PE and a half credit in 12th grade for PE. So that is a total of 3 credits that was required for students at Radnor High School. So where did these come from? When we started to look into where do these come from, we actually dug into some of the state Board of Education requirements. And so what you see in front of you is 57.31, and this actually regulates private academic schools, so private schools in the state of Pennsylvania. There's no such credit requirement that exists for public schools. And so when we looked at this and the public school credit requirement was lacking, we started to look into what was required. And under Chapter 4, you have requirements for standards. And so we have a standards-based requirement for physical education that students are required to hit to show their mastery of content. All subject areas have state standards. This is the health and PE. It's broken down by grade bands. You must meet the standard on or before the grade in question. So by grade 12, students must hit all of the state standards. So here's a zooming in. You can see that standard A for physical activity for 10.4.12, students must, by the end of their 12th grade year, be able to evaluate and engage in individual physical activity plan that supports achievement, et cetera, et cetera. When we, as a committee, looked at what we had to have the students meet in order to satisfy the state standards, we then looked at what other districts were doing. And you can see, I'll highlight some of these. We looked at local schools. We looked at some schools that were exemplars for health and PE. And we looked at how many credits they required, as well as any, in the notes section, you'll see any unique requirements that they have. So Conestoga requires 1.9 total credits of health and PE. They do have contract PE, which they call EEPE, that allows students to contract out and do their PE offsite. Downingtown requires 1.66 credits of health and PE. They have things like athletic training, dance, and driver's ed that's in here. Lower Merion requires 2 credits. They've got a variety of different things that are in there. And so we went through and looked at what these different schools offered. We got to run through their program of studies and see how many total credits they offered and what courses they offered. And we did look at quite a number of them. This helped us to get a good framework of what are some options for our students as we went through here. We then took and surveyed our students at the high school. We had over 400 students that participated in the survey, and I'll go through and highlight some of the key responses that we got from students. First was that students that participate in sports sports are committing 2 to 2.5 hours in most cases, sometimes more, after school during season. Our students are very involved, and most students are engaging in approximately 3 hours of homework each night, in addition to after they get home from their athletic practices. So what's a day in the life of a student look like? So our students would get up at 7:15, get ready, get on the bus or drive to school. They have the traditional school day. They'd have their sport after school. They get home, they get something to eat, and then they'd have their homework. And so this is a pretty typical student day in the life of a Radnor student. All right, so, and I'm going to skip through some of these. I'll highlight the key points, but course programs. So we looked at, there were some mixed results on the course programming. You had about 130 students that thought that the PE programming was appealing, either strongly agreeing or agreeing, and 151 that disagreed or strongly disagreed with the course programs for high school PE. When we asked them for feedback on some of the courses that we saw in other high schools, we got interest in yoga and Pilates was the one that showed the most interest, followed by self-defense, and then followed by athletic training and sports medicine. All right. So we asked students feedback on a number of other different things, such as online courses, and would they take online courses. We asked them if they would take PE in summer school, if it was offered in summer school. We asked them about independent study style PE courses and whether or not they would be interested in that. We asked them about drop-in fitness activities during the school day. So kind of like the math center or writing center at the high school, would they be interested if we had drop-in activities that students could participate in during the school day? And that actually garnered interest. And that's one of the things that came out of this study that we implemented for this year was drop-in fitness activities. Additionally, we asked them, students, if we reduce the graduation requirements, would they take physical education anyway? And would they be interested in, if they would participate in a sport, would they, if we counted that towards their PE requirement, would they be in favor of that? We considered health classes as part of the wellness initiative and asked them if we offered an additional elective 11th and 12th grade health class, would they be interested in taking that? And students were not interested in taking a third health course. And then we asked for any other feedback that students would like to give us. The majority of the open-ended responses were students not feeling that requirements were needed for athletes. We had next, students felt that health needed to be revamped, or the course offerings needed to be revamped, or ensuring that outside sports were given an opportunity to opt out of taking PE if we were going to allow athletes to not take PE. So the takeaways from this, as the committee was, the committee felt that the health and well-being of our student body was paramount, and that we needed to make sure that the decisions that we made that were ensuring the health and well-being of our students. We recognize that students are very involved at Radnor, both in the classroom and outside of the classroom. There is no credit requirement for PE in the state of Pennsylvania that students must satisfy. So there's no 3 credits or 2 credit or et cetera credit requirement that we need to hit, no specific number. When we looked at it, Radnor requires 3 credits, and all other schools that we looked at have required an average of around 2 credits. Some required less than that. And students felt the course offerings need to be revamped. So the next steps that we presented, that we looked at taking was to revise the existing course offerings, reduce the required PE credits for graduation, and create opportunities for drop-in fitness activities during the day. And that third one we did. So I would say the recommendation that we came to the board with on July 28th at the board business meeting that the board approved for 1 year was to reduce the PE requirements at Radnor High School. It would allow us to lower the class sizes for our 9th grade health and PE and 10th grade health classes dramatically due to COVID. Our goal was then to create additional electives and reduce class sizes in core classes. We did this by shifting PE teachers that had multiple certs into other areas such as business and math. This also provided space for social distancing at lunches. So we currently have students set up in the back gym, which was used by health and PE. So that is one less area that they could use. And we wanted to create drop-in fitness sessions for our students. So subsequent to that July meeting, Mrs. Kevius and I met with members of the high school PE department, and I'll let Mrs. Kevius run through the single sheet that we went through at the curriculum committee, highlighting some of the recommendations that we brought forward.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtold, and thank you everyone for having me tonight. Is it possible for you to bring up that sheet, Mr. Bechtold? That would be helpful. Thank you. So, as Mr. Bechtold said, the sheet that you see in front of you outlines not just the current requirements, but the proposed requirements. And I'm going to take you through the credit portion first. If you take a look at the top of the page, our PE requirements in the 2019-2020 school year and previous to those years was 3 credits total. So in 9th and 10th grade, students had both health and PE together. In 10th grade, that was swimming. We had offered beginner swimming and intermediate swimming. If students tested out of either one of those, they had the option to take a PE elective. And then beyond that, in their 11th and 12th grade year, there was no health requirement. However, there was a PE requirement both of those years again. And when you add that all up, that does come to 3 credits total. Our current PE requirements, and Mr. Bechtold touched on that a little bit, are a direct result of COVID, right? So our concern was making sure that all classes were small for health and safety concerns, but especially our PE classes, given the nature of the class itself and the proximity that students come into one another. And so the requirements for this year and this year only, we offered PE in 9th grade to ensure, again, that class sizes were extremely small and to make sure that students were safe in doing so. And in doing that, we maintained our 9th grade wellness program as well as our 10th grade our 9th grade health program, as well as our 10th grade health program for a total of 1.5 credits. And so our total credits for the 2020-2021 school year are a total of 6, as opposed to our normal 6.5 credits that students are asked to carry. And again, that's only a reflection of COVID. The proposed PE requirements moving forward would be to maintain the 9th grade program, to have health and wellness, which has always been coupled together. And then in 10th grade, again, to maintain that health program, but only to offer beginner swimming moving forward. And one of the discussions, that we did have in many of our meetings was what are the skills we want our students to walk away with in terms of wellness, in terms of, health. And one of those was swimming. And I mentioned this at the curriculum committee meeting, but I think we often take for granted that our students have access to swim lessons, have access to pools, and that's not always the case in Radnor. And so, swimming is a life skill, it's a safety issue. We want to make sure that when they graduate from the high school, they have that ability to do so. And so if you are in 10th grade, at the end of your freshman year, you will always take a swim test to make sure or to determine where you are leveled, what your level of proficiency is. If you test beyond beginner, then you would be able to take, moving forward, PE as an elective credit. If not, if you are, considered to be a beginner swimmer, you would take a semester of swimming. Now, for next year and for next year only, we would offer those swimming classes only in the fall semester, so that we make sure that we're not running into the construction when they look at the natatorium and, make those renovations. That course, again, would be 0.25 credits because it would meet every other day and only for a semester. So if you're looking at the total number of credits in terms of graduation, it would be 1.5 if the student did not take swimming. If they were required to take beginner swimming, then it wouldn't be 1.75 credits. And again, it could certainly be more than that, as we're offering PE as electives moving forward. Mr. Bechtold, can you just go down a little bit? please. Thank you. So if you look at our current offerings, you'll see everything that's listed, right now in the program of studies, our 9th and 10th grade programs, our swimming, and then, starting at PE 11-12, you see 3 separate electives that we have in place: team sports option, individual and dual sports, weight training, and then we also have a few others: personal training and physical fitness, lifeguarding and CPR, swim selective, fitness for athletes, which was really a stopgap last year when we were looking at schedule changes, and adaptive physical education. Moving forward, most of those would be maintained. Lifeguarding and CPR is something that the PE department, felt strongly about. It offers a lot of, employment opportunities for our students, and certainly some life skills that would benefit them. So we want to make sure that we keep that in place. One of the things that you do want to notice, and I should have pointed out at the beginning, was, next to every course, you see either an R or an E. Anything that's an R is a required course, and then anything with an E would obviously be an elective. But going back to the proposed offerings, moving forward in the 2021-2022 school year, we would maintain, again, the 9th and 10th grade programs. Beginner swimming would be required. Lifeguarding and CPR, as I said, would stay in place. PE team sports would also stay. That's a very popular option with our students. They really enjoy those team sports and playing together. It brings so many different groups of students together. And I know, Mrs. Solomon, you mentioned that at the curriculum committee meeting, how unique that is to PE. And then individual sports and selective weight training, you'll see a little caret next to them. These electives would be phased out, moving forward. And in the time frame between next school year and the following, this is when the majority of the work and construction would be done for the wellness project. And in that time, starting really now, but through those next couple of years, we would be working with the PE department to kind of revitalize their offerings and kind of reimagine the potential of all we can do with them, especially with the new facility that's coming in place. And so Mrs. Roseland and Mr. Bechtold and the rest of the department and I have been speaking about, what would we like those electives to look like? Some of the ideas that we do have would be like a yoga and Pilates elective, looking at something that is specifically designed for engineers, some kind of strength core training piece. We are also looking at an elective where students could learn the skills of being an athletic trainer. And again, in terms of looking forward to, different careers that our students could explore, that's certainly something that many do explore and would be a great asset to them to learn those skills. The anticipated construction of the project, right? The start date is in May of 2021. So all of these decisions that we've made have been very intentional to be, respectful of that date when we are starting in, this coming May, and then also the anticipated completion date in August of 2022. So, all the different phases, looking at the turf or looking at the bleacher or whatever part of that project we're doing, we're very cognizant of the spaces that our PE department will have to use for classes, and we've tried to be respectful of that looking forward. Thank you, Mr. Bechtold.
And if I could just chime in, and like anything we do with this recommendation, we have become very good, I think, as a district in looking at continuous improvement. And we've also become very, we focused on evaluating and adjusting. And like anything we do with this recommendation, we're going to continue to evaluate this, and we're going to continue to adjust as we move forward. There is a lot of exciting things happening within wellness, within our physical education. I'm excited for the possibility of the courses, these elective courses that our department is willing to design and create based on student interest. But we're going to have to monitor that. We're going to have to evaluate and look at who's taking those courses. When are they taking those courses? We also have this wonderful project moving forward. How do we make sure that all of our students, every one of our students, has access to those facilities and is using that for lifelong fitness? So this is going to continue to evolve, through time as we move forward and we continue to have these discussions and we look at the wellness of our students. But as for tonight, this is our recommendation moving forward. and we've appreciated and we can understand the challenges with everyone, but we appreciate the collaboration that we've had, to this point moving forward.
Okay, so does the board have questions about this, the presentation or the recommendation? Sarah, go ahead.
I wanted to thank Mr. Bechtold and Ms. Kevgis for coming and re-presenting this. I know you just did this last week at the curriculum meeting, and I know that gets a little old sometimes. But I think given how high profile a project this was, I think, it may not have been as monumental as the sleep study. I think it was really meaningful to a number of people in the community. So I really appreciate that you took the time to come back and present it at a meeting where more of the community would be sure to see and understand all the effort that went in, both with your teams and the phys ed department, and also community members who joined the committee. Sorry. No, I understand the approach here, and I appreciate it. I think we had some lively discussion at curriculum, but I understand where you're going with this. I also think I'm particularly interested in kind of the trial period that you've kind of proposed. Like, look, this is something we revisit our whole curriculum, and maybe this is something in a couple of years when things have changed, we'll see, gosh, this type of class is really popular and we need to add one, or, we need to figure out a way to get more students engaged. We talked a little bit about how to market these classes so students see them as appealing. I'm also very mindful of the fact that, during COVID, there are a number of students who aren't getting other electives that they want, right? So we changed that limitation this year, but there are other electives they may not be getting because course offerings may be limited, or, it's harder to take certain hands-on courses when you're hybrid or virtual entirely. And I think that at the very least, a temporary change, and I'm not saying I'm voting for this only temporarily, but I think gives students really the opportunity to engage in other courses. And I appreciate that this also really offers the flexibility for students, not just who are athletes in our particular student programs, but also athletes outside of school, and that trying to map out who's doing what outside of school gets very difficult. I was particularly happy to hear, I know in the curriculum meeting that they were talking about really trying to make sure we have some certified yoga and Pilates instructors. That's had a real resurgence. And it's, among the athletes, I know the student athletes are doing that in some of their practices. So I think that's great. And I did see self-defense was number 2 on the students list. I know that's something that a lot of kids end up taking in college, but I think it'd be really great if it were something we offer here too. So thank you for all your efforts. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Anytime you want to pop by the high school for pickleball, just let me know.
Yeah, that's Sarah's favorite. I just want to sort of give a bit of context to this, why this came before the whole board, because we really never had a chance to discuss it. And so one thing that came out during the curriculum committee discussion among the committee members was the recognition that there are students who won't have physical activity in their day if it's not required. I'm thinking these are kids that are really into their academics potentially, and they're loading up on electives in, whatever they're interested in as a junior or senior. And by making this change, we're allowing them a tremendous amount of freedom, but we're also opening the door for maybe not such a healthy lifestyle for, kids who won't take that break to do something completely different than sit in class and, do something cerebral. So that was just something I wanted to point out. And so I think we felt from the committee, we wanted to let everybody on the board sort of ponder that issue. Is this the way we want to go? It solves an obvious issue for the student athlete because it frees up their time during the day. It frees up other students, but does it free them in a way that's actually healthy for their overall lifestyle? Because I foresee that there's so many courses to take. And if you're really interested in social studies, you're going to load up on 3, possible electives there, and you're not going to take a gym course. And so your day then, as that type of student, is going to be really sitting all day. You're not going to have a break for that critical, just physical activity that can make you more productive in all ways, but also is just really good for your overall lifestyle. So that's kind of what we're weighing, and to put that on a 10th grader, I don't know that they're going to be able to say, oh, I really should take a gym elective rather than, what they think they need for college success or whatever. And then I do want to make the point too, and I said this in the curriculum committee meeting, I kind of view the PE classes as the great equalizer in the high school. It is really the chance where you're thrown together with whoever from, all different aspects of the school. And I don't think that that would happen if kids were just selecting the areas of the things they're interested in. They may never, meet a whole section of other kids from the school. So that might be another perceived negative of not requiring the PE every year.
Well, and Lydia, let me just say, just jump in that, there seemed to be kind of broad consensus at the curriculum meeting that, athletes, kids involved in athletics, which accounts for close to 70% of our high school population, and depending the season, we're somewhere in there. So that those kids involved in those athletic activities, there seemed to be kind of broad consensus at the curriculum committee that, it makes sense for them not to have to do physical education. Mm-hmm. Well, the statement you made about, physical education is this broad equalizer, this one place where everybody mixes. But if you remove the athletes from physical education, you now are creating a situation where 20 to 30% of your population has to do it. And then they in a way are being harmed and are unequal for how they can schedule classes versus those kids who are involved in athletics. So that was a very eye-opening thing for me in the discussions and hearing from students and families about the equity and fairness we want to create within our schedule in the day and opportunities people have for classes. So if we're kind of universally in favor of the athletes not having to, then it's no longer going to be this great equalizer of a program. The other point you're making about, how do we want to make sure that the kids who aren't involved in our athletic programs, we want to make sure that wellness and being physically healthy, what are they doing to do that? And I think that's where this opportunity we have to really reimagine the program and really reimagine what we do in 9th grade. Our physical education teachers, we have an outstanding staff who connect with kids. One of the survey results that I saw, and I see it myself, and especially when I see it in some of our staff who are not only they're physical education teachers during the day, but they're coaching our kids after school, is the connections they make and the draw that they have with kids. So we have an opportunity freshman year to introduce our kids to lifelong fitness freshman year. We have an opportunity to introduce them to all of the opportunities, this physical education room, fitness room that we're going to have by the year 2022. All of the different programming that we're going to have that we're looking to develop as electives in future years. We're finding that a lot of our kids are signing up for clubs outside of school because, or going to go to health clubs outside of school because we haven't had the facility at school for all our kids to be involved. So we have an opportunity in 9th grade to really reimagine how do we instill lifelong fitness and how do we encourage then the programs in 10th, 11th, and 12th graders for the kids to continue to be involved, especially those kids who aren't involved in athletics, and maybe those kids who are involved in athletics might still have an interest to be involved. And that's something that we're going to want to monitor as we look at our wellness program moving forward. So I think we have an opportunity to address that as we move forward. And I think those are great points you've raised.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm not in favor of this, or I do totally understand where this came from. And I think that it is a good sort of outcome to try to solve the conundrum of what to do with the student athletes. No, I'm more just giving context for the rest of the board because I think it is kind of a big change to do this and to change the requirements. And so I'm just putting it out there. What I think what I heard coming from the committee members was, I guess wanted to hear all of you weigh in as well.
Okay. I don't know if there's Amy, go ahead. Sure, jump in.
Mr. Batchelor, thank you, because I didn't catch that in the curriculum committee meeting, that 9th grade PE is going to be reimagined too. Did I hear that correctly? Or I was remembering just that the electives were going to be reimagined. Is it the curriculum for 9th grade too?
Yeah, because this will be the only time we are offering physical education. So we're going to be wanting to look at what it is and what is the best way to offer that program and to instill for our kids, what is to come and what are those opportunities in 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. And make sure that we're instilling our kids this lifelong fitness and wellness. So yes, so that's going to be a piece of it, as well as looking at what does that course look like moving forward.
Well, I'm not a high school student taking gym, but I'm super excited about the possibility of reimagining exercise and physical fitness. And I mean, reimagining everything from time to time, I think is really inspiring for students. So I appreciate everybody who's thinking creatively and outside the box about how to do that for students, because the more we can meet their needs and interests, the better, the healthier they're going to be. Regarding the concern about later on, I'm wondering if, just like in wellness visits, we're learning different, or clinicians are learning different questions to ask to see how students are doing. For example, how much sleep are you getting? When students present with different ideas, different symptoms of not feeling well or demotivation or whatever. I'm wondering if there's any thought from a counseling perspective of creating maybe a checklist that would include, maybe it already does, but as the kids go through school, when they are presenting with things that are concerning, you sort of go like through a physician's checklist of how much exercise are you getting? How much sleep are you getting? What is your diet like? I think as a school, we can do a really, maybe we're already doing it, but if we're not, I think that might be something to think about, to do some surveillance about what some of these lifestyle habits are of our students. And that will give us an opportunity to try to work with them to build these habits all across the board into their lives. I just, maybe it's already being done. I'm just curious about that.
No, I think that's a great point that can be and PT and Dan, feel free to jump in, but I would say that's a great point that we want to try to do to instill, I know that, I'll tell you this, my wife knows when I go 2 or 3 days and I haven't gone on the elliptical, or I haven't had a chance to go for a walk or do some type of physical activity. And I also know that with everything with COVID, walks and going for a run or hitting the elliptical, makes a difference for my thinking, gives me a little bit of opportunity to catch my breath and say, okay, wait a minute, put things in perspective. And I think the more we do that for our kids and give them these opportunities to realize what lifelong fitness is and what it means, is going to be critical. So I think those suggestions and how we do it as part of our overall wellness picture and where we our counselors, what type of counseling are they giving to kids, and what type of classes are they taking, what are they doing on their overall wellness. I think that's a great suggestion, and something that I know our counselors are looking at the whole child and their all wellness, but it's something that we could look at as we move forward.
Yeah, I can't, it's not a super original idea, I'll admit. I got that from Dr. Catherine Dalsgaard. I remember when she came to speak about school start times, and she was talking about, she treats children with anxiety, and one of the first things she does when she meets with them is goes over their sleep habits, because oftentimes what's presenting is not really great sleep hygiene, and that's having an adverse effect on their state of their mental health. So I was, even beyond counselors, I'm wondering if it's maybe something to be on the radar of anybody who's working with students who struggle. We have, an abundance of resources, and if we habituate ourselves to thinking for surveillance purposes as students present in, I'm not sure if it's still there, but the middle school HOPE and the high school HOPE programs and special education programs and the Karen Foundation, if that staff is always attuned to asking these very simple surveillance type questions, maybe that's a launch pad to sort of uncover what, as you said, you need there'll be flexibility in this program, what adaptations may need to take place over time based on that surveillance that you're doing.
Mrs. Goldman, I'll jump in for just a second. You know, the 9th grade health program does look at nutrition and building a healthy lifestyle and how that works together with sleep patterns and keeping diaries of, you know, food intake and calories and things along those lines. And, you know, I think it all fits together in different pieces. You know, in speaking with counselors, I know one of the things that I always push as a principal, and I did as a teacher, and I reinforce it with my counselors now, is finding that balance, right? I think our students, you know, always want to challenge themselves, and sometimes they bite off a little bit more than they can chew, and that's where those unhealthy sleep hygiene, you know, comes into play, and that's a huge concern. That's always been a concern of mine, that, you know, I want them to challenge themselves, but I want them to be balanced at the same time. And so I think we try to really reinforce that. And when we do see students that start to struggle, you know, and we do have them coming through that HS Hope pipeline, you know, those are the times that we look at that checklist. You know, are you sleeping in class? Are you getting enough rest? Are you, you know, have your diet, have your habits changed in terms of your diet, et cetera. So there are those protocols in place to make sure that we are looking at students when they are struggling.
Does the health curriculum cover recommendations for how much sleep? I mean, we've spent a lot of time as a district on sleep, right? So if any students at this point don't know the value of sleep, you know, it's hard to imagine given how much emphasis we put on that as a school district. But does our health curriculum also cover what good hygiene in terms of nutrition looks like, and what good hygiene looks like in terms of physical activity, so that, you know, a student might not know what they don't know?
I think we put a chapter in about, if you want to get good sleep, avoid watching board meetings.
No, that's how you fall asleep. I think Jeff, Amy, if you're done, I think Jeff had something. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have one quick question and a comment. How is the infrastructure project timeline at this point with swimming impact what the new requirement will be? Will there be a group of students who will not, some may consider themselves to be fortunate, not to have to go through that requirement as a result of construction? Just curious on timeline. Sarah may know that, Mrs. Dunn, or I'm not sure.
For next year, the natatorium is scheduled for, Ms. Dunn, if I'm wrong, please correct me, but March of 2022. So we would run swimming in the fall next year, and only in the fall for that first semester, so that, you know, that didn't interfere with the project itself.
That's curious. No, I was on the committee as the board representative, and I just want to salute and reinsure or get assurance, I should say, and I believe this will be the case, as a really wonderful group of parents, of students, of physical education teachers, led by Mr. Bechtold. And this is a resource that should continue to be tapped. As we move forward, it looks like we're going to potentially have some time, depending on our vote, to really reimagine, as this group and curriculum committee and Mr. Bechtold and Mrs. Kefkis and others have done so far, as we headed to 21 and especially 2022, that we really re-engage this. As a plug for the committee, to re-engage. I think folks are continuing to weigh in. I know they're engaged. They've reached out to a number of us, some people on the committee, and let's continue. Maybe there's some other voices. I know time is short, but we can do it virtually or even through email, to continue to learn, to get feedback. The survey was great. The feedback from the committee was great. The data is great. And I would just put just a little plug to keep the lines of communication going, because we're going to have that opportunity regardless of what the outcome is this evening.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jeff. And I just wanted to apologize. I cracked a joke and didn't get to answer your question there, Amy. You know, Ms. Goldman, your full question. I mean, I think your question about what is in that health curriculum and those pieces are things we can continue to look on and reflect upon as well. And remember that we have a cycle. We have a curriculum on top of this we pulled this activity, and it's something I don't like to do, but we pulled this because this came from, I think we all remember, this came from a school board member. What? Yeah. This was a public school board meeting where a school board member recommended we study this, and then another board member, seconded and said, we want to look at this, and this has been out there for a while. And that's how this began. And we pulled it out of what would be normally, you'd like to do these things through the curriculum cycle process. So we still have that as well that can tie into all this, whether that ties into it for some of the questions from Amy and the points from Jeff. We can look to coordinate all those different pieces.
And don't we also have the wellness study at some point too? I mean, there should be a lot of, circling back to this in the near future, I would think. I mean, we have to, we have COVID, but there are, I would think there are going to be intervals in the very near future, relatively near future, through the things you just mentioned, Mr. Batchelor, where this will continue to get a look, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, our overall wellness study is something that we will be talking about in the spring, and all the different components. And certainly this is and falls under, and as we're finding, that umbrella of wellness is a large umbrella that covers many aspects of our students' life. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to make some connections with it all moving forward.
All righty. Well, so I don't serve on curriculum. I did watch the meeting. I do want to thank Mr. Bechtold and Mrs. Kavgas and Jeff. Thank you for being part of that committee, and thank you to the people who participated. Somebody mentioned earlier that we normally run committees in a very kind of particular way, and we do. I mean, and this kind of became a priority project, right? So to me, it actually, in some senses, made sense that it came before the board. It had been identified by a board member actually prior to many of you joining. And so there was a certain logic that it come back to the board. But I do want to say anything about this, this particular initiative that got, that June was crazy. COVID has really put a huge strain on every administrator and every teacher. And so I really consider it a Herculean achievement that in a year that everybody is dealing with COVID, that on top of that, the committee, the administrators were even able to take the work of the committee and get the surveys done and collate the information and bring forth any recommendations. So I really want to acknowledge you for that. And I actually appreciate having it at the board meeting. There are different ways of looking at this, and that's okay. But I really appreciate that the spirit of this is you took the feedback from the committee, you took a survey. Mrs. Kavgas, I mean, I think somebody mentioned we surveyed about 400 kids. To my recollection, based on a student population of about 1,000 or 1,100 kids, I think a third response is actually a pretty good response from a typical survey that we conduct. Is that accurate?
That is.
Yeah. I thought it seemed like would we love it if all 1,100 kids responded? Sure. But that's not typically the kind of response we get from a survey. So, I think it provided you with a lot of good information that's really going to inform some work moving forward. And this is an initiative, Mr. Batchelor, you spoke about the curriculum review cycle. This for me is an initiative that is, well aligned with our intention with the infrastructure project and provides an opportunity we're going to try something different here. We're going to try something new. And then just as a matter of course, you're going to evaluate if the intended outcome is what we wanted. But I would have said separate from all of that, one of the things that this recommendation is doing is aligning our phys ed requirement and our, phys ed, we're not changing health, but it's aligning our phys ed requirement with what a lot of other school districts in the area are. Our phys ed requirement was actually a pretty high one. And I'm not going to say that was wrong or bad, but it had an impact. We tasked the administration with looking at this. They've brought forth the recommendation that was informed by, surveys and a committee. And I do appreciate the work of the committee. And Jeff, to your point, is there a time to bring them back into this? you know, that might be a really good idea, but I want to remind everybody, like, right now, probably that's not a reasonable expectation. We have administrators who need to continue with, you know, staffing our buildings and, you know, doing all sorts of things under COVID. So if, you know, depending on how this vote goes tonight, there may be a pause button on this for no other reason than everybody's working overtime and then some, and they need to be able to catch their breath. So anyway, I'm going to support this, and I think it's a really exciting opportunity. Andrew, I think you just raised your hand. You wanted to make a little brief comment. I didn't see that before I started talking, but please chime in and you know, we'll see.
Not a problem at all. You know, this is the kind of stuff that for those of you relatively new board members, this is the kind of stuff we usually have talked about pre-COVID. You know, this is the good stuff, you know, about curriculum and you know, there's a lot of good here. I know there are some changes, Lydia. I kind of see your point about the great equalizer and other points, but also, you know, doing some research on adolescent development myself. There's also the development of autonomy and giving young adults the decisions, or, you know, giving them the autonomy to make decisions about their curriculum. And it's about that age when it's good to cultivate those sensibilities in adolescence. So I understand what you mean, but I also thinking of it in terms of the positives, like what Amy was saying, that we can reimagine PE. I mean, a lot of these norms about PE have been in place for 100 years or something. So I think that reimagining that, I think, is appropriate and could be exciting, especially in conjunction with our new facilities. I think there's a lot to be excited about here.
Okay, great. So with that, if we...
I just wanted to add one thing, if I may,
Sure.
to tap into what Andrew said. And that is that even though reimagining is fun, obviously I agree with that, I also want to acknowledge that it's not easy. And I know that a lot of thought and effort must have gone into trying to figure out how to reimagine that. And so I'm sure it's been acknowledged tonight, but I just want, I acknowledge it's hard for us who are creatures of habit sometimes to think of new ways of doing things. So I just want to salute anybody, whether it's student input, staff input, administrative input, board member input, you know, for taking that on and trying to think, you know, I just don't think it's taken for granted. It's hard to do sometimes, and I appreciate it and wanted to say that before you move on.
Okay, great.
I want to, Amy, thank you for that. And Susan, thank you for your comments, because yes, we have our director of secondary teaching and learning and our high school principal with us. But if lately for me to find them and meet with them, I had to find, you know, I have to find PT teaching a physics class, and I had to find Dan teaching a class over at the middle school today. So our administrators are really chipping in and doing a lot to support, you know, our district right now in so many ways.
Yep. All righty, great. And Andrew, you're right. It was nice to talk about just a curriculum item tonight. You know, what a nice change of pace. All right, with that, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor of the recommended action? Aye. And all those opposed? The motion passes 8-0. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mrs. Kevigas and Mr. Bechtold. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. We are going to move into item 8.3, which is commitment of the 2019-2020 fund balance. And I believe Mrs. Deco is on board, so she can walk us through that. But the recommended action is that the board approves the reallocation of general fund balances per the recommendations below, with the understanding that as per board policy 620 fund balance, the board reserves the right to change the commitment of such funds by subsequent resolution of the board. The net change to the fund balance for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020 is $3,004,817. Do I have a motion and a second? I have a motion from Ms. Dunn, second from Ms. Solomon. Thank you. So I just wanted to put that out there in case there's questions. Mrs. Deco, I think as I referenced in my finance committee remarks earlier, there are some changes to these numbers that were reviewed at the finance committee meeting. And Mrs. Deco is going to walk us through that. I see she's coming online now.
So thank you, Mrs. Stern. So there were definitely some changes. When I gave you the draft statements, we hadn't seen the schedule of federal awards and assistance. And when we reviewed that, we noticed that some of our COVID grants that crossed 2 years, actually the expenses were recorded, but the receivable was not. So that's what happened to make the difference.
Yes, thank you. So if you could just walk us through, I forget what the dollar amount change was. And it's really just a reflection of the COVID grant money, that when you book the expenses back in that fiscal year. One of the things we talked about at the finance committee meeting, for those of you who may not have seen it, is that when we did a review of the expenses for COVID, one of the things we discussed is that, there have been expenses obviously since March 13th, right up until, today, which the implication there is that it's over 2 different fiscal years. And so one of the things Michelle and the Business Administration Office is tasked with is identifying which expenses are they going to recognize in last year's, fiscal year, and which of those will be recognized this year. And if you have an expense in a year, then to the extent we have, some funding in the form of these grants, she needed to recognize it back there. Michelle, am I putting that in layman's term well enough? And so relatively late in the audit process, which this is the reason that school districts have audits. This is the reason that audits come before a finance committee in their draft form. And this is the reason that you have public discussion about, audits, is that it provides these opportunities. And, it just came to the attention that some expenses that were, booked back to last year, we needed to put the funding for that, the grant dollars, back there as well. Michelle, I don't know if you want to take it from there. You looked like you were looking for some information to gather there.
So that's correct. So the expenses were recorded properly in the 2019-20 fiscal year, and the revenue was not recorded properly because those grants were received late in the year. So as we were closing out the audit, we were trying to reconcile the revenues with the expenses. So there were $761,000 worth of revenue that we needed to record, but the expenses were recorded properly. So when you look at the draft audit report that we gave you, those couple of pages at the finance committee meeting, you'll see that the federal revenues are going to be exceeded by those dollars.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see on this particular form back. And actually, Michelle, I think we talked about it, that we're probably going to do a little brief recap of that 2-page sheet in our December finance meeting. So not that we're going to bring it back to the board, but as a matter of school, the schoolwork we need to, as part of closing out the audit that we're going to approve in December for the June 30 year, a crucial step that we have to take as a board is to allocate the fund, is to make this allocation of fund balance. We're required to keep our general, our unassigned fund balance at 8% of our overall budget. And this step needs to be taken, this action needs to be taken by the board tonight so that it can be incorporated into the audit that we're going to approve in December.
That's correct.
Yeah. If the board doesn't have questions about this, it was, it is something we will go over in, we'll go recap this in the finance committee meeting next month, just to kind of jive the numbers back. And, we recognize, I'm going to tell you, I think it took me several years on the board to really wrap my head around what this means to do fund balance allocations and what the implications of, looking at an audit are. And, so I really appreciate, this is kind of the first time board members are getting an opportunity to do this, because 4 of you weren't even on the board last year when we did this particular allocation. But this is part of what we need to do. And if there are questions, we're happy to answer them. But if not, we're going to move this forward. And the unassigned fund balance is reflective of 8% of our budget, which is what our policy says that we have to keep that number at. All righty. All that to say, all those in favor, say aye. And all those opposed? And the motion carries 8-0. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Michelle. Have a happy Thanksgiving. We are going to move into the consent agenda. Although board action is required, it is generally unnecessary to hold discussion on these items. With the consent of all board members, they are therefore grouped and approval is given in one motion. In the event a board member wants to discuss any item, the board president will move it to an appropriate place on the agenda. Do we have any consent agenda items that people would like to pull tonight? Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda items 10.1. Just scroll down to the bottom of it. Sorry, you guys. 10.1 through 14.1. May I have a motion? A motion and a motion and a second from, it looked like Liz. So a motion from Ms. Solomon and a second from Ms. Duffy. All those in favor? Say aye. And the consent agenda passes 8-0. I do want to say we have a couple of retirements on tonight's consent agenda. And I think Mr. Batchelor will probably try to find, they'll be added to the group of employees that we will recognize where we typically recognize them in June.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
I would be remiss to not thank Mr. Morgan. He was an integral part of my son's music life in Radnor Middle School. And I wish him well in that retirement. All righty, let's see. We are going to move into board liaison reports. Delaware County Community College, Ms. Solomon.
Before we jump into that, I just want to note too, one other piece on the agenda is Tricia Klusman, who is who currently is the administrative assistant at the middle school to Dr. Weidlich, and I would say actually to the entire building with all that Tricia does. She will be, and as we have discussed, Patty Calderoni, my administrative assistant secretary, will be retiring, and we have her through. We still have a little bit of time to celebrate Patty as a board. She does so much in supporting the board, and Tricia will be replacing her and working closely with obviously with me and with the school board as we move forward. And we're just absolutely thrilled that Tricia has been interested in the position and thrilled to have Tricia move into this position soon. So just want to congratulate her.
Yeah, my apologies. We actually accepted Patty's retirement. I think it was last month. So happily, we wish her well and really happy for you, Ken, that you're going to be having is it Ms. Klusman? Does she go by Pat? It's another Patricia. Does she go by
Tricia? She goes by Tricia. Yeah. Tricia. They know that I'm not too bright, so they needed to be a similar name or I would have got confused. No, so it was it's Tricia she goes by, and what I'm thrilled about is already, Patty and Tricia have always worked well together, and so there'll be a good transition, and we need to also continue to support our middle school, through this transition. So we will, if we haven't already posted her position, we will be posting her position at the middle school and moving forward. And as I said, we still have time to celebrate and thank Patty before she retires. But Patty has been just amazing. The support she has given not only to me but all of us as to the entire board. And we look forward to having Tricia, provide that same level of support and welcoming her.
That's great. All right, so we're going to move into our liaison reports. And first up is Delaware County Community College, Ms. Solomon.
Thank you. We had our fall liaison meeting on October 28th, and we received an update on the Upper Darby campus. Then that's the new location for the community college, and we received reports from all of the different areas at the college, and I have that PowerPoint. So if anyone is interested in more detail about the updates that we received, just let me know and I can forward that information on to you. And I believe we're going to forego It sounds like our January meeting. So the next time we will meet will be April, and that will probably be the discussion of their budget.
Right. Okay, thank you. Ms. Goldman, Delaware County Intermediate Unit.
We had board meetings and committee meetings on November 4th and 11th. I just want to make sure board members know that the best summary I think I can give you, given how comprehensive the work of the DCIU is in this DCIU connection memo that comes in your board packets. I assume it's also posted online. There's so much that we do in any given meeting. It's hard to encapsulate in a board report. I do want to mention, though, that they have innovation grants at the DCIU. And one of the things that we approved on November 4th at our board meeting was to create a new position, a coordinator of equity and diversity. There are a few new positions that have come out of that innovation fund this year, and that's one of them. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that I had the opportunity with the executive director of the DCIU to tour all 3 campuses of the DCIU last Monday. I was at their Marple campus, their Fulcroft campus, and their brand new Aston location. And I almost got a chance to see Lydia Solomon, but she was too busy. I walked past her door with her name on it and didn't want to interrupt, but I just can't. I think it's so important that when we get a chance, we look at some of what's going on at the DCIU. The career and technical education classes were fascinating to watch, and the facilities, watching kids learn how to do cosmetology, do exercise physiology. I mean, the courses that they offer were really fascinating, watching the kids do that in real time and learn these real world skills. And then, of course, the other things that the DCIU does that we hear about, but I actually got to see in action, and that's, these incredible staff members who take care of children of all ages, from literally babies all the way through high school, who have some mild and some really significant disabilities. And, Lydia is, among the staff members doing that work, just that incredible work. And to watch in action what's going on in the buildings really was, it was a very moving experience. So that's just, I wanted to say that of all the things that I've done for the DCIU this past month, the visits, and it took almost a whole day to go to those 3 campuses was really important. And I wanted to share that and invite others to join me if you'd like, to see these DCIU campuses and all the work that's going on there on behalf of students across Delaware County. Our next meetings will be December 2nd and December 9th.
Okay, great. Thank you. Federal Relations Network, Dr. Babson.
No report at this time.
All right, Delaware County School Board's Legislative Council. So Mr. Moore is not here. I think we'll probably get a report from him next month. Pennsylvania School Boards Association, Dr. Babson.
Also no report at this time.
All righty, great. Parks and Recreation, are you going to do this one, Ms. Dunn?
I was just going to jump in on that one, actually.
Okay.
We didn't have a meeting, but our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, December 8th, which Sarah and I will probably miss because we're both doing curriculum at that time, but we'll confirm that with Tammy. It's usually on a Thursday, but for some reason it's scheduled for Tuesday, December 8th.
Okay. Radnor Educational Foundation. All righty, Ms. Duffy. Oh, you're muted.
As we last met on Wednesday, November 18th, and in addition to the exciting news you heard at the beginning about the historic funding of the technology grant, REF funded a grant to support workshops for our special education students and families. And these workshops are to share best practices for inclusion during the time of COVID. So another really big impact they're helping to make in our community. Their winter grant cycle, the letter of intents are due on January 8th. So anyone looking to submit, please start putting that on your radar. And just lastly, they're always looking for volunteers. They have a number of open committees. So anyone in the community that might be interested in serving, please contact Teji Breton She's the director of REF.
Super, thank you.
We're not meeting to the new, and then the next meeting is in January of the new year.
Great. Radnor Alumni Council, that's Bradley, so we're going to move along. And Radnor High School Scholarship Fund, Jeff, Mr. Jubileer.
Yes. The community campaign was kicked off. I hope all of you and many in our community received the brochure and are opening up your hearts and wallets to this wonderful program and cause for our well-deserving student scholars. Unfortunately, on a more serious, not that I wasn't serious there, I was serious. You know, some of our programs, unfortunately, are going to have difficulty moving forward. In particular, the beloved Breakfast with Santa. It's obviously, I haven't got official word, but I'm sure it's not going to be able to take place, at least in its iteration that we've all enjoyed over the last several years. And things of that nature and other programs have been cut because of COVID. So really hoping that our community campaign will be more successful and successful this particular year, and we'll be able to give our students the support they need to go on to institutions of higher education and learning. At this point, we're still not meeting in person. We're just communicating virtually, and there are no current meeting dates set for the beginning of the year at this point.
Okay, Radnor Page, Ms. Dunn.
There's no report at this time.
Okay, Radnor Committee for Special Education, Ms. Monahan.
Ms. Duffy has kind of already highlighted some of the news for the Radnor Committee of Special Education. They received notice that the grant that they had applied for to RAF on this inclusion during the time of COVID webinar workshop was approved. So they're very thankful about that. And it will be taking place sometime in 2021. They haven't set a date at this point, but they are working on that.
I have to say, I just think that is like the nicest example of a collaboration between one group that helps our kids and another group that is helping our kids. Yeah, that was really neat to hear. All right, we're going to move on to new business. Do we have any new business tonight? Okay, seeing that, I'm going to move into board announcements. Our next round of committee meetings will be Policy and Finance. Will be meeting Tuesday, December 1st, beginning at 5 p.m. and those meetings will be virtual. Our Curriculum Committee meeting will be, did I just say Friday? I meant to say Tuesday. Tuesday, December 8th at 5 p.m. That meeting will be virtual. And then our board reorganization meeting will begin at 7 o'clock on Tuesday, December 8th, and that will be virtual. And our next regular business meeting will be Tuesday, December 15th, and that will also be virtual. Let's see, number 18, public comment on new issues raised or subjects developed following priority action items. As I said earlier, the board shall provide an opportunity for eligible participants to comment on matters of concern, official deliberation, or official action or deliberation. And our eligible participants are asked to follow board policy 006 meetings and public participation. And we have also, starting tonight, the opportunity to register and participate in our meeting during with the live virtual participation. Mr. Petiti, do we have any additional public comment this evening?
So I'm actually going to jump in.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. They told me earlier, Allison. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Welcome to our meeting. Do we have any additional public comment?
So we have had no one register during the meeting to deliver comments live.
Okay.
However, I did have one additional comment that was submitted to the board comments email. This comment was submitted by a resident on behalf of the Alumni Association of Radnor High School, who had submitted a letter in a previous month, and it was not read. So I am going to go ahead and just read what she
is. This letter written by a member of the public and they're writing for the Alumni Association?
The Alumni Association had submitted a letter, which I believe was originally read in September. They submitted it for a second time in October, and it must have been missed for some reason. So this is another member of the public who is asking that that letter be read. Okay, so
so a member of the public is submitting the writing of somebody else? Mr. Christopho, I'm going to need you to weigh in on this one. We have a member of the public who is submitting public comment that is not their public comment. Can you help us through what's the protocol there?
Yeah, the point of public comment is for the members of public to provide their own public comment. So it's not, for example, to provide an article that somebody else wrote or published somewhere else that just gets reread to the board. So unless the person who is submitted the article indicates that they are part of this organization or had something to do with publishing it, it's not really their public comment. It could be distributed to the board, but it's really not appropriate public comment.
Okay. So Ms. Gango, maybe you could, maybe we can reach back out to, if the Alumni Association submitted a comment that we inadvertently read a second time in October, perhaps we can reach out to them and maybe the Alumni Association will submit it at a later time.
Okay.
All right. So
then that is it. There's no more comment.
All righty, great. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn from Ms. Dunn and a second from Dr. Babson. All those in favor? The motion to adjourn passes 8-0. I would like to wish everyone a happy and safe, socially distant Thanksgiving if that's what's needed, and to thank you all for everybody for your work, tonight and as always. All righty. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Night.
Thank you.
Thanks.